Hey, I have a second channel now. I post like weird memes and stuff. Go check it out if you want. Thanks. Hi. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is a game that means a lot to me. It was a big part of my childhood, being the first game I was ever really able to call my own. No second player to argue with, no shared save data to have tampered with. The game was entirely mine to explore. It's been nearly a decade since this passion project of a game stole my heart and changed how I view the medium of video games. They aren't just products, at least not inherently. They have the potential to be works of art made by passionate people who just want to make others happy. And as a fan of this medium, I think that's a really important thing to realize if you want to engage with it. As a kid, I was never able to 100% the game, despite desperately wanting to. I think I collected around 110 stars before getting stuck on a few missions I couldn't beat. In particular, I remember spending way too much time on this freaking chimp challenge in Honey Hop Galaxy. Anyway, during the summer of 2024, I felt a pretty strong urge to return to the game, just to relive some memories. And I ended up starting a fresh save file, falling in love with this game all over again. I know this is largely up to nostalgia, but for me, I don't think I'll ever be able to find something that makes me as happy and carefree as this game does. I ended up loving my replay so much that I continued all the way to 100%. It was a strange time for my mental health since I'd just had a somewhat traumatic experience, and I ended up processing a lot of my thoughts through this game and my connection to it. Fast forwarding a bit to the summer of 2025, the current summer as of my writing, after doing a far less emotionally charged completion of Galaxy 1,
Did she just go in and then immediately leave? Wait, what? What was the point of that? What?
I'd once again felt that urge to return to the second game. Not to 100% it again, the urge wasn't nearly that strong, but just to visit for a while. So I did exactly that. I booted up the game and walked around Starship Mario, talking to some NPCs, soaking in the atmosphere, just sort of vibing. And that's when I had a bit of a revelation. I have a 100% complete save file of my favorite childhood game where I can go anywhere I want to go and do whatever I want to do. No people to save, no stars to find, nothing was required of me because I'd already done everything I was asked. So I did some exploration, using my familiarity with the game to bend the rules a bit and see how far I could take its mechanics. Finding things I'd never found, doing stupid stuff I'd never thought to do, messing around with glitches I'd never found the time to experiment with. I was looking at the game through a completely different lens, a slower one, and a calmer one. Sure, as far as my save file is concerned, I'm not really doing anything of value, but maybe just this once. That's okay. Over the couple of days I'd ended up spending with the game, I found a lot more than I expected. It was awesome, probably some of the most fun I've had the entire summer. And now that I've had a few days to sit on that fact and do a little messing around on the side, I think I'm ready to share some of that, just with anyone who'd like to listen. This isn't a send-off to the game, I definitely don't consider it a goodbye. Instead, it's more of a thank you to its developers for creating this wonderful project that stole my heart and kinda changed my life. This video is primarily aimed at people like me, the ultra nerds who know way too much about this game for their own good. But we're a pretty small bunch, and I don't think making this video exclusive territory for such a tiny number of people is a very good idea. I'm sure there are plenty more people who'd love to learn more about this game, but aren't as obsessive about it as I am. And that's fine, reasonable even. Y'all deserve to hear as much of this stuff as you want to. So although this video will still be very specific and detailed, going into the most obscure and inconsequential things, most of which I was probably not supposed to find, I'm going to try my best to provide context for everything I'm saying, so that most people who've done a standard playthrough can follow along just fine. So I won't go over things that are pretty common knowledge under their own entries, but if stuff like that is required to understand something more obscure, it'll be briefly explained. Okay, I think that's about all I need to say for the preamble, so on to the ramble. Oh, also, this exists now? It got the game has a remaster on Switch now. It was announced like halfway into making this video. I didn't buy it, but from what I've seen, most of these tricks should still work fine. I want to be clear that this remaster had nothing to do with me choosing to speak about this game. I'm not trying to chase clout or whatever, I'm just talking about something that I'm passionate about because it's fun. Okay, on to the video. You can actually outrun the starbits from the first crystal in World 2's map by immediately heading back to World 1's portal. They just sort of freeze when you get to the portal. As far as I know, this is the only area where something like this is possible. Every other crystal is too far from a portal, entering levels is too slow. Even the zoom out button doesn't stop you from collecting these guys. I guess you could always quit the game, but then the crystals just respawn and there's no point anymore. Also, just pop quiz for a sec. How many of these crystals are there on the world map? Like, throughout the entire game? 5, 6, 10? Yeah, well, no, apparently there is a grand total of 3, which is news to me. I could have sworn there were more, but nope. There's one past Flip Swap, one before Hightail Falls, and one directly after. They stop halfway into the second world. Why would you even add these? It's not really a big deal. In Shiverburn Galaxy's first star, if you head over to collect the Cloud Flower and come back to the start with 3 clouds, by chaining together a few long jumps, you can actually reach a starbit crystal that's supposed to be broken with a launch star. The crystal works exactly as it does in a launch star. You don't even have to spin to break it. And from here, if you want to, you can also go a little further and get to this planet, which lets you skip a bunch of the star. Pretty neat. The order that comets and stars are listed is pretty inconsistent. Sometimes comets come last, and sometimes they're in the middle. World 1 is fine, with comets unanimously listed last. World 2 moves everything to the middle, which is weird, but at least it's consistent with itself, except for Bowser's lava layer, I guess, and it just falls apart from there. I was thinking that the order could maybe depend on which ones you completed first, but the list on the wiki is exactly the same as mine, and I pretty much did every star right as it was unlocked, so I doubt the list would be this out of order. Like, don't get me wrong, there is probably a reason. Maybe I'm just being dumb here, but I can't find anything. The galaxy with the longest title is Bowser Jr.'s Fearsome Fleet, with 27 characters. Keep in mind that the Jr. is abbreviated here, meaning that this kid was holding back and could have made this name so long it wouldn't fit on the star list. This fact isn't all that obscure, I think, but it's pretty important if you want to mess around with the game's physics and get to areas you aren't supposed to. For some reason, holding A while performing an aerial spin causes you to go a lot higher and fall slower too. This is probably something you should be doing every time you spin. There's little reason not to, so I won't be mentioning it from this point onward. Just something I sort of needed to mention for anyone unaware. It's very important, especially for the next fact. In Flip Out Galaxy, you can actually get on top of every single side wall using Luigi. I'm gonna go over how to do that here because I think it's interesting, but if you want to figure it out on your own, you can stop watching now or skip to the next fact using the timestamps on the video player. I wouldn't want to ruin the adventure for you if that's your thing. The first one's fairly easy. Just get on top of these platforms and do some backflip spinny stuff to get on top. Not too much use for it, but it's cool. The area that comes right after, all the way to the second checkpoint, seems entirely impossible. Even with a triple jump, even by using the extra spots on the sides, the walls are just too high. And yeah, that's totally correct. But fortunately, there's another method. If you play through the section normally and head over to the second checkpoint, you can do a pretty precise triple jump into a spin, into a wall jump, into a spin to get on top of this wall that's otherwise blocked by a slope. And from there, every previous section on the planet is accessible. The final section is pretty similar to the first one. Just do some backflip spinny stuff to get on the platform to the right of the one with the comet medal, then do some more backflip spinny stuff to get inside this little crevice. You can even get on top of the final star platform by doing some similar stuff there. I'm kinda surprised none of these were caught during playtesting, especially the final section. You get there by doing almost the exact same thing you do to reach the comet medal on the platform that's literally right next to it. Why would you not test that? I'd sort of assumed these were caught and left in on purpose, just for the fun of it, but the messy collision leads me to believe otherwise. I don't know, it's weird, but I'm super glad they were left in. The circle symbol that shows up on the world selection menu in place of levels you haven't unlocked never goes away. Instead, the galaxy's icon is just placed on top. This is most visible in Flip Swap Galaxy, but it's also possible during certain points of the rotations of various other galaxies. For example, Sky Station, Haunty Halls, Beat Block, Honey Hop, etc. It's pretty common knowledge in the Galaxy 2 community that the Luigi ghost in Clockwork Ruins' first star is completely broken. But I feel like the general oddness of these ghosts isn't given enough attention. Like, look at him boarding Flizzard. He's just sorta standing there. Okay. Oh, he's off. Yeah, whenever he's doing pretty much anything that isn't walking or jumping, he looks very odd. Like, don't get me wrong, this is not a complaint. I love this. He looks so goofy and weirdly unexpressively expressive. The save and quit button in the pause menu is really weird. After pressing it, you'll get a pop-up that says save your progress and quit, to which you can answer OK or no. Choosing OK leads to another pop-up that says the game has been saved. Finally, it asks again, do you really want to quit? To which most players would probably say OK, since the purpose of the button is to save and quit. But if you say no, your data was already saved, meaning that this button can also function as a standard save button, which isn't usually an option. It's not particularly useful, given that this button doesn't show up inside of galaxies, but hey, it's there. Vertical momentum is really weird in the Galaxy games. If you jump while another force is pushing you up, you go flying, it's crazy. It's probably the easiest to mess around with in Flip Swap Galaxy, since you have control over when the objects move, and the effects are very visible, to say the least. You'll need to walk off of an activated panel onto a deactivated one, and spin such that you'll be picked up by the deactivated one during its activation animation. Finally, right before the animation is complete, do whatever kind of jump you prefer and absorb the platform's vertical momentum. Backflips are good for verticality, long jumps are good for distance, and standard jumps are good if it's your first time, since they're the easiest to input. There are a ton of areas where you can experiment with this sort of thing, and in my opinion it's pretty fun to mess around with. Definitely some nice intel for reaching areas you're not supposed to on your own time. When speaking to the mail toad after receiving a new letter, this menu pops up. It seems pretty normal, and it looks nice. But, for no particular reason, if I give the control stick a little nudge... What was that? Why did the letter move? Like seriously, why does it move? What is the purpose of programming that? It's not a big deal, but it seems really weird. I was actually stumped on this for a couple of days. It wasn't on my mind 24/7 or anything, but it genuinely perplexed me. Was it just a cute secret? Was it some sort of bizarre mistake? Why can't I nudge this freaking letter? Well, the answer to that question lies in the other interface the mail toad can bring up. One that I'd never seen until making this video. If you speak to him without any new letters to read, he actually lets you check out every previous one. And of course, he's not just gonna chuck every letter on screen at once, so instead, you're able to scroll through them. There are some buttons on screen you can use, or you can use the joystick or D-pad. Can you see where this is going now? If you scroll to either end of the list, the corresponding arrow will disappear, telling you that there's nothing more to see. But lo and behold, if you use the control stick or D-pad here, bam. The same animation from earlier. I'm pretty sure this means that the underlying system behind both menus is the same, with the only reason there aren't any arrows when receiving a letter being that both sides of the letter are ends of the list. There's nothing more to see. Of course, I could be wrong here. I never looked at the game's code or anything, but I think at the very least it's safe to say that there was some copy-pasting done here. I genuinely cannot think of a single reason for this animation to have been intentionally added to this interface. This is more of an opinion than a fact, but the world map backgrounds are honestly really beautiful and atmospheric. Unless you're weird like me and enjoy vibing in these for way too long, you spend so little consecutive time in them that they sort of go unnoticed. But yeah, they're just lovely. Especially the one for World S. Its colors are astounding. Remember those bonus areas where you have to defeat a group of enemies within a strict time limit? Well, guess what? Those are all regular parts of their galaxies, like any other planet would be. You just can't tell most of the time since they have a locked camera, and if you know where to look, there they are. This is most easily visible in Throwback Galaxy, where it's just a short way off from the main planet. Okay, so that's already kinda cool, I guess, but what if I told you that you can just freaking go there? You can go to those planets without using the teleporter. Now, it doesn't work in every galaxy, since specific tricks are needed to get enough distance, but there are methods for a pretty decent chunk of them. An easy one is, again, in Throwback Galaxy. More specifically, it's Second Star, where a couple of long jumps with the Cloudflower can get you there pretty trivially. If you're looking for a tougher one, a good option is Starshine Beach's First Star. Where's the teleporter challenge? Well, it's all the way up there. Oh my gosh, that's insane! If you know your way around this game's glitches, you can probably tell where I'm going with this one. It requires a glitch pretty unanimously dubbed the Infinite Flutter, which allows Yoshi to, well, flutter infinitely. Since it's fairly well known and takes a while to properly explain, I've linked a tutorial in the description and the top right corner for anyone who's out of the loop. I wouldn't want to simplify or skip out on anything, since that would probably just make it even more confusing to newcomers. Anyway, it takes a good while to get there. For me, it was a little over 5 minutes, but if you have the patience, it's really not too bad. Is there any practical use for this? No. I guess if you want more out of it, you can complete the challenge this way, Infinite Flutter all the way back, and then use the teleporter to get back to the challenge with nothing to do, but, like, why would you ever do that? I mean, okay, I guess I did that, so, This trick also works in reverse. Instead of getting to one of these in a way you're not supposed to, you can leave in a way you're not supposed to after entering normally. This is made significantly more of a challenge by the timer, because, yeah, that's a thing now since we're using the teleporter to get in. You have 30 seconds to get back, and in a lot of cases, that's probably not going to be enough. I've only managed to get back successfully in Yoshi Star's second mission, and even that one's pretty tight. So, yeah, definitely a neat challenge if you're into speedrunning or whatever. I certainly think it's quite fun. If you find the Infinite Flutter as fun to mess around with as I do, there's a mod by BeckMK8 called Super Yoshi Galaxy that makes a Yoshi spawn in every star. I'm not using it here since this video is strictly about the vanilla game, but it's still pretty interesting regardless. Actually, while we're on the topic of mods, I should probably mention the ones that I am using here. I'm using Dolphin Emulator to run the game on my MacBook in 1080p, I'm using the Classic Controller mod by Super Hackio to have an easier time using a standard controller, and finally, I'm using the HD Textures mod, also by Super Hackio, to help the textures look better with the higher resolution. I usually prefer playing on console, for me there's just never going to be a better control scheme for the Galaxy games than a Wiimote, nunchuck, TV, and sensor bar. But I can't deny that watching 480p footage outside of that context isn't really the best, so I figured since I have the means, I might as well. In Cloudy Court Galaxy, there's a super well-hidden one-up under this hedge sculpture of a dinosaur that you can get by crouch walking. I'm not sure if this sculpture is supposed to resemble anything specific from the Mario universe. Maybe Dory? Actually, what are any of these supposed to be? A normal person would probably say, they're just real-life animals, don't look at it too hard. And to that I say, what real-life animals? In the universe, someone probably had to make these. How did they... Did someone make these? Are they natural? I don't know anymore. Alright, this is gonna be a very long one, so please just bear with me. In Throwback Galaxy, the structure that you climb throughout is repeatedly referred to as a hill by its residents. I don't think that this is an accurate term. A hill, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, yes, we're really doing this, is a naturally raised area of land, not as high or craggy as a mountain. Let's start with the first half, about it being naturally raised. Since we're going off of Mario logic, and more specifically Space Mario logic, where areas like this can be naturally occurring parts of the universe, I think it's fair to say that this area could have potentially just shown up like that one day. Or maybe it used to look natural and degraded over time, I don't know. It's never specifically stated otherwise, so sure. The trouble comes from the second half of the definition, not as high or craggy as a mountain. First, the height. There doesn't seem to be an exact range for what's considered a mountain versus a hill, so comparing the size of one to another is pretty redundant, but even if there was one, I've got no clue how to measure this thing, so I can't really compare it to anything anyways. This means that technically I cannot confirm that this is too big to be considered a hill. However, look at it for literally 2 seconds, that's a friggin' mountain! Okay, even if someone somehow thinks that this thing is an appropriate size to be considered a hill, the definition also states that it can't be as craggy as a mountain. I have no idea what that means, so let's look it up. Okay, apparently it means of a landscape having many crags. Well, that was useless. What the heck is a crag? Okay, crag definition. A steep or rugged cliff or rock face. Okay, given the amount of rocks with faces on this thing, that is probably the most unfortunate wording that could have been used, but okay. In this context, a rock face is not a rock with a literal face, so we're ignoring that. Regardless, this thing is very steep in numerous areas, meaning that it does indeed have many steep cliffs, meaning that it does indeed have many crags, meaning that it is indeed craggy, meaning that it probably cannot be a hill. There, I did it. I think I proved my point. I don't really know. This is so stupid, what am I doing? I didn't discover this on my own. It was through a video by Renee803 a few years back, but it's interesting enough that I think it's worth a mention. It's actually entirely possible to die on Starship Mario. First, get on Yoshi's back and head over to the Star Shroom. You're going to want to stand roughly here on the stem of the ship and start infinite fluttering. After a couple of seconds, you'll escape the gravitational pull of the Star Shroom and start being pulled toward the starship instead. You don't need to touch the analog stick at all, and doing so could sometimes result in the camera rotating, which we don't want to happen. Continue infinite fluttering without moving the stick until the starship becomes invisible. From there, you'll need to start holding left on the analog stick and continue fluttering. The goal here is to move far enough to the side of the starship that when you ground pound, you go past it instead of getting pulled back in. Yeah. In Sweet Mystery Galaxy, there's a super large area below the level with fully interactable ground. There are probably a few ways to access this area, I'm not sure though, since, I can't see it. But the one that I ended up finding is done by infinite fluttering from the flip switch section over to the ending cake and stopping near this ribbon. Might have been some unused content, might have been placed there by mistake, I have no idea. If you stand on the inside of a lily pad and crouch spin into its edge, it actually rises very, very slightly. And this can be repeated infinitely, so you can go as high as you want. I originally found this out through a video by The Golden Block, where he attempted to collect every coin in Galaxy 1. And yeah, it definitely has a lot more utility in that game. To my knowledge, there are only 2 galaxies in this game that even feature lily pads, Starshine Beach and Honey Hop, and of the 2, it's only really useful in Honey Hop, since Starshine Beach has a Yoshi, which lets you get around a lot faster. It's still pretty neat though. In the opening section of Flash Black Galaxy, there's a lot of weird stuff you can do with this 2D section. If you play through it normally and fly to the next planet, keeping Yoshi the whole way through, you can use the infinite flutter to go back, letting you interact with it from the outside. First of all, there's no invisible wall or anything stopping you from entering the section from the front, so you can just sort of go back in. You can also interact with everything inside without entering by using your cursor, including the grapple flowers and the blimp fruit, so that's pretty cool. If you infinite flutter high enough, you can also get on top of the roof, which is counted as a part of the 2D section. As you can probably tell, the collision here is, well, non-existent. I'm pretty sure you're just walking on the outside of what's supposed to be the ceiling's collision. And finally, for this fact, if you jump all the way down to the beginning, you can actually infinite flutter below the 2D section, and if you position yourself correctly, you can go inside of this section's background. On the first planet of Clockwork Ruins Galaxy, it's actually possible to get on top of this wall. The obvious method that most people would probably try is to ride these rotating platforms to the top of their arcs and do some backflip spinny stuff to get up top. But unfortunately, that seems to be just barely impossible. You can't get high enough with a backflip on any set of platforms, you don't even have enough room to do a triple jump. Taking advantage of momentum doesn't do much of anything, it just doesn't work. But fortunately, that doesn't matter, because we're not gonna use those. Instead, head past the first set of platforms and go to the face in the wall. Since the face is round and doesn't stick out farther than the rest of the wall's surface, it leaves small indents on its sides, which, since they're just another side of a regular wall, are completely wall-jumpable surfaces. Unfortunately, both sides are too far away from each other for you to chain wall jumps back and forth. But what if I told you that you only need one of these walls to perform multiple wall jumps? This is going to be a little bit confusing, but I'm pretty sure this is how it works. On your average wall, after performing a wall jump, the only way to jump off of that same wall again is to land on the ground or touch an opposite-facing wall. If you try again before meeting either of these criteria, you just can't do it. However, after performing a wall jump here, you almost immediately come into contact with the face, which can push you away from the wall a bit as you touch more of its curve. But because of its curved surface, which contains just about every angle known to man, touching the parts closest to the wall you're jumping off of also counts as touching an opposite-facing wall, which re-enables your ability to jump off of the previous wall. This means that if you wall jump, touch the face, spin, and head back to the previous wall, you can do another wall jump. Once you get to the peak of the wall, you're not quite done, since there's an overhang that you seemingly can't avoid. This is where it gets really tricky. First, make sure that you're at the very top of the wall, which you can do by keeping track of your distance during your previous wall jumps and adjusting as you go, or adjusting afterward. Start sliding down from the very top, holding down on the analog stick to ensure that you're traveling toward the camera. Then, just before you detach from the wall, perform a wall jump. The timing here is very tight, and if you end up going too far, you'll end up detaching from the wall and performing a regular jump afterwards. It's not helpful here, since you're stuck in a similar state to when you're falling down a slope. You can't spin to gain more height or anything. But if you time it correctly, you can wall jump far enough from the overhang to avoid bumping into it, and from there, you can perform a spin to make it up top. The timing here is also very tight. If you spin too early, you'll collide with the wall, and if you do it too late, your spin won't reach high enough to get on top. But if you do it correctly, bam! There's not much to do here aside from mess around with the wonky collision, like the walls that extend out too far and this tree with a hitbox that doesn't go high enough. It's both very hard and very useless, but hey, it's possible. And personally, I think that's pretty darn rad. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I've found that I think is obscure enough for most players to find interesting. If you love this game as much as I do, I'd really recommend doing your own experimenting and seeing what you can find. I'm just one person, and I definitely haven't found everything there is to know, so I'm sure there's plenty for you to uncover. Or heck, if this game isn't your favorite, try messing around in your own favorite games. You never know what you might find. As for myself, while I'm certainly not done with this game, I think it'll be a good while till I touch it again. And I'm okay with that. It's already had a very large impact on me. That much should be obvious by now, and I'm more than satisfied with what I've been given here. I would not be the person I am today if it weren't for this game. That's just a fact for me. And hey, thanks to the remaster, I think a lot more people are about to start sharing that sentiment. I hope to see you next time, but if I don't, it was nice knowing ya. Keep spreading love. Hello, lovely people. Welcome to the end card, which is a thing that I do now. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here, I'm really nervous about releasing this video. I haven't made such a large project in, well, ever, and while I'm certainly very happy that I've made what I have, I don't really know if people will be receptive to it. I don't know if it was too personal, too rambly, too unfocused. I know it's at least partially anxiety talking here, but there's like infinite ways this could go wrong. So if you feel inclined, please share your thoughts in the comments. Any feedback you have, criticism and support alike, is absolutely welcome. Thank you.